just a deep dive and making sure that we're going back to contributors and making sure that we got it right and that what is reflected in the action plan is reflected properly. We are looking for endorsements from nonprofit partners. So to make sure this is not a LISC-owned action plan, that's why we're going back for endorsements, to make sure that these things that are here are already in alignment with missions of organizations that are on the ground doing the work, and that it's in alignment with the aspirations and goals that we've been hearing over the past year and a half. LISC's role in this is implementation support. So if you're signing on and endorsing this and being an implementation partner, LISC has some tools to support that implementation, including Section 4 grant dollars, financing, lending, AmeriCorps program. Just to reiterate, LISC is a neutral party here. So we don't really care who's in office. We are not in partnership with philanthropy or a specific government arm. This is really just lifting up the aspirations and goals that we have heard over the year and a half from community. If you are not in these particular East Side neighborhoods, but you're interested in this and you want to know more, send me an email and I can fill you in on some next steps. In 2022, we're going to be opening up for a second cohort of other neighborhoods that want to do this work. It's really organizing from within. So we're not bringing more to that. We're just helping to provide some administrative support to do some of that organizing work. There's also going to be an open source guide and a how-to guide that'll be on our website for anyone that's ready to kind of kick this off and if people are eager to get started. So why am I bringing this up? There are several strategies that align with some of the work that we're doing here in this, in these training sessions. One of the strategies that came up was to build the capacity for the redevelopment of several business districts. Now in this report, they're very specific to this geography. So we're talking about Jefferson Avenue, Fillmore Avenue, Broadway Fillmore at the intersection there, East Delavan. These are the ones that came up the most in our engagements. But as you can see by these action items, these are things that we've talked about in this session last week, but also beyond just these East Side geographies. And we have had some outreach from Black Rock and Niagara Street and other places outside of the East Side. So I say this all because in parallel to this, I did have a request for our group to form a bid task force and to get together and figure out how do we really operationalize getting this bid going. Yes, we are willing to do this. In January, at the end of this training session, we will start to go deeper on how do we operationalize some of the things that we are covering in this training. And beyond that, it might be broader than just a bid task force, and it might be more of a commercial district stabilization task force. And the reason why I say this is because even pre-pandemic, getting a bid takes a lot of work. There are a lot of people here who are here voluntarily. There are several people who are also paid to be here. So we want to make sure that we're looking at all the options and not putting all of our eggs in one basket. Just a really brief story of my experience when I first became a commercial district manager. I went to a town where for 3 years before, their volunteers and their board, they spent a lot of time and effort trying to get a bid passed. They were really close. In the end, they didn't. It didn't pass because a couple of property owners weren't super informed about the process, and it was gerrymandered a little bit. So when I entered that organization as an AmeriCorps, I didn't know any of this. But what I was told by the few remaining board members left, people were exhausted and tired. And they told me that we needed to rethink our strategy and show proof of concept. We needed to show more incremental changes and proof so that when we go for a bid again, we were able to really show the value. So that's all to say that I think this commercial district task force can start to put some of those proof of concept elements into action. So how are we going to be doing those shared service models that are looking beyond one district, but working as a collective? I've also put together this graphic that bids are one piece of the pie. Yes, we can certainly look at that, look at the legislation. How do we do it? There's also American Rescue Plan Act funds coming down the pike. So how do we make that land for this type of work in a really meaningful way. Municipal service contracts, instead of going after these one district at a time, is there a way that we can do this collectively and together? Looking at pilots, payment in lieu of taxes, it's a little bit more tricky situation. Hopefully I'll be able to get someone in from the city to talk about some of these things on our 5th session. So stay tuned for that. But there are some examples of this working in other areas of Buffalo. And Common Council, we saw like even on Grant Street just this past year or two, they were able to get a lot of funding for the streetscape redevelopments and improvements through Common Council. So thinking about how we can do this as a team and going after this as a group, this is what this task force is going to be doing, and also showing some of those proof of concepts along the way. So I just want to get a gauge of whether this is of interest to people. Is this something that people would want to do? Yep, I see a couple nodding heads, some thumbs ups. All right. Great. So just stay posted. If you're on our email list, if you're coming to these other sessions, you'll know about that as it comes, as we come around. So today we are talking about promotions and promoting your district. Before I dive into some bullet points here, I wanted to open up the floor and see what people, what you think promotions is. What does it really mean to be promoting your business districts?
Getting the name out there or the brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Celebrating the accessibility of the neighborhood and why it's so unique to the area.
Absolutely.
Driving positive traffic to the community.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're all super on point. There's a lot of different definitions of this. I just pulled this one: selling the image and the promise and the brand of your district to all prospects. When we talk about all prospects, we're talking about shoppers and patrons and residents, but we're also talking about investors and new businesses. To get new businesses, we need to promote existing businesses and how they're able to be successful in your district. That's a huge way of getting new businesses in and letting them know that they can be successful there too. So today we're going to talk a little bit about promotional strategy. I'm just going to talk a little bit of an overview, but then we're going to kick it off to Jonathan here, who has a lot of experience in this around branding campaigns. I think now that I've known him, he's on his 3rd or 4th branding campaign that I know of. And we'll talk about marketing, a little bit about retail promotions and how to really make this work for your businesses and some examples of that and some choices that you have there. And finally, special events and what they do for the district and how you can really, again, make them work for you. So why do we do it? Why are we even talking about this? And why do we care? I'll open that up again.
I think the community depends on its business district to stay viable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Well, we are
Athena said promoting the culture of your community and taxes.
and taxes. Yep. To promote local business development. Yeah, Drew, exactly. Yeah, we're really trying to promote the businesses and the business mix that we have. And yes, to change community attitudes and focus on assets and potential and not deficit. So how do we change the attitudes of shoppers and people, investors? We're also looking at things like building a unified image and really marketing yourself on what is distinct, really similar to what Brandy had mentioned. What is it about your district that makes you unique? Generating fresh activity and bringing life to your district, communicating progress and excitement, which attracts shoppers and investors and new businesses. And supporting those businesses through promotion is a value add. So coming full circle, what are the things that property owners care about if we're going to go after bids? They want their rents filled. And some property owners care about facade improvements. Not all of them, as you all probably know, but some do. And so really supporting those businesses and showing how your organization is linked to that in order to sell that value to property owners if you're going after a bid, or to sell it to business owners if you're going after a business membership, and diversifying your funding stream and looking at other ways of getting funding. There's a lot of these like pay to play opportunities where it's if a business is providing funds, they get a level of service, a level of marketing that you provide. So these are different things that you can think about why we do it. Another reason why we do it, the community is asking for things like this. So these are specific quotes that we have from the engagement process that we've been in for the past year and a half in several East Side neighborhoods, particularly. We're hearing things like improving the neighborhood feel and pride. I would like to see more businesses on all of Jefferson. We need a variety of businesses and people from inside and outside the community to make it a destination. We need marketing and more foot traffic is mentioned here. Small businesses need extra support with COVID. Could activities support these businesses? Where do we go? We saw this a lot in COVID. Where do we go? What restaurants are open and what times are they open? And what do they offer? And who's doing curbside pickup and delivery and all of those things? So these are all kinds of things that we're thinking about when we're talking about promoting our district. MLK banners celebrating local and historical Black figures. Again, narrative and identity and history, and really celebrating that.
I think there's two things that are missing.
Yeah, please.
The first thing is that the premise of this promotion is really to bring folks from outside of the district, for the most part, into the district to help with, drive sales and that type of thing. The problem that I would say a lot of communities have, and I know the Broadway Fillmore area has, is we don't do a good enough job of communicating with the local residents. Like, there needs to be a mechanism that allows for promoting things that are happening within the community to the residents that are within say 10-block radius of the center of the business district. And a case in point is, and Steve was in the meeting with me, but we met at the Broadway Market for a potential large grant for the Broadway Fillmore area, and only about 20 people showed up. 3 of those folks were from the city doing the presentation. 1 or 2 people were from outside the area with a whole different agenda. 3 or 4 people were from the Broadway Market. And the rest of the folks, a couple of them were probably residents, but that room should have been filled with 100+ people to provide input into this grant opportunity. We just don't, in general, I think, communicate well. There needs to be a mechanism for that. And so it's something that needs to be looked at. The second thing quickly is, it's great to have business classes, but the problem you have is once people complete the class and they get their certificate, what they really need is a mentor that they can go to help them move from concepts to actually making and developing a business. We just don't have we just don't have that, so.
Yeah, I think everything that you said, Carl, we've heard a lot about the business mentorship as well, the one-on-ones. And this communications infrastructure is, I think, something that's I think it's something that we could certainly look at in this joint task force when we're really diving deeper on how are we operationalizing. I think these are some things that there are some examples that have come up already from other conversations that we've been having. So we'll certainly dive deeper on that. Is there anything else that's missing here that anybody else wants to share? I do see Sydney's chat here. We have to be careful about coining phrases pay to play. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that correction. Pay to grow business and stabilize community. That's a great suggestion. So how do we develop a district's image? It sounds like a lot of people here already are really familiar with branding and things like that. I'm just going to give a little bit of a structural framework, take what you want, but what assets are currently in the district? We have this really cool new tool, which I'll introduce at the end of the session today. It's just a brief introduction. You all know, though, already what assets are in your district. I mean, you don't necessarily need a tool to tell you that. You're there every day. So what are those assets? What is the business mix? What are the shopper attitudes and the market potential? We will go a little deeper on this next session as well in the economic vitality session. what niche does our district serve in the market? So what is different from the region, but also what experience are you selling that you can't get online if you're shopping online? You know, what is it that's going to really make people come down? What shoppers can your business mix attract? Based on that niche, are you promoting to those shoppers, or are there other shoppers? Like what Carl said, how are we bringing new people in to spend money? You know, so those are some of the things that we're thinking about here. And then using that data, those other bullet points, what is the emerging brand? So I'll pause here and let you all jump in. Are there brands that are already emerging that you want to share with each other so that people hear what's going on across the city?
Don't
Oh,
be shy.
I'll jump in. Sometimes, so for me, developing your district's image is a little different for rebirthing or having a renaissance to a district's image because you're not necessarily trying to change it, but like you said, pull those resources, pull out what's really good. But at the same time, the East Side has been blighted with churches and liquor stores. So is that really an asset, you know, or Dollar Tree stores, you know? So some of it is definitely self-interest based on who holds the purse string, you know, and what they want to see in these blighted communities. So sometimes it's hard to peel back from the weeds to understand what is the true asset in this community without changing what it is completely.
Yeah, that's a good point. And hopefully this tool that we have will also help with some of the data around what are some positive things that are clearly there. So we'll go into that a little bit deeper a little later in the session. So some other things based on the brand are like what activities and marketing campaigns and events can support that image. And we will talk about this in the next 2 slides here. And then finally, to wrap it all up, you know, people think that the logo is so important, but at the end, what are those visual elements that really tell you that you're in a place? And how does that get reflected either in on your banner program, like on banners that are going up, or on street furniture or window decals for businesses? How are people knowing that once they're there, they're in a place, you know? And so these are just some of the steps. I do have a little worksheet around this that goes a little bit deeper, and we will do that at the end of the session today. So retail event strategy. Is this familiar to people? Are people familiar with retail promotions? Yeah, I see one person nodding their head, yes. Yep, okay. So just as I'm not going through a ton of details or examples here, I'm just providing just overall, and I'll go quickly through this if people are familiar with it. We're looking at things like cooperative promotions. So things that restaurant walks where all the businesses promoted are the same type of business, and you're getting people to patron those for a certain period of time. Thematic promotions. So if you have a lot of wellness services and beauty supply stores and I don't know, massage therapists or something, like you could have a health and wellness promotion, or maybe there's a lot of arts and cultural groups and museums or cultural centers and things like that you want to promote. So you could do something that's thematic. And then we're also talking about targeted customer promotions. So how are we getting those specific customers? I think, again, this kind of goes to Carl's thought before. How are you bringing them in? So if there's a university close by or a corporation close by that has a lot of employees, how are you getting them to spend their lunch money during those hours in your district? Or citizen shopping hours, senior citizen shopping hours. We saw that throughout COVID, that there were times that were specifically geared for citizens to come shop. The Shop 716 e-gift card program that is out right now, getting Erie County local citizens to shop at Erie County shops. So these are some examples just broadly. And I'm not saying that we are doing all of these things. I'm just saying that these are based on the assets that you have, being strategic about picking and choosing which ones of these things kind of fit that brand and can move that forward. Special events, we're talking about things that celebrate your identity and history and narrative. These were a couple examples of things that happened this year during COVID, like the Pappy Martin Jazz Festival and Funk Fest, Jazz on the Patio, really speaking to the identity and the narrative of those places. special holidays like Juneteenth. So when things like this are going on, what sort of retail promotions are we doing to make sure that businesses are benefiting from that and seeing an increase of sales when there's an increase of foot traffic? So those are some of the things that we're thinking about here in this promotional strategies. And social gatherings, activating public spaces. So we saw the movies at Northland this year and last year, really brought a lot of people. It was all social distance friendly in cars, almost like a drive-in theater. Kuleta Pamoja, right in front of Johnny B. Wiley Stadium there this summer, bringing vendors out, bringing markets out. Are there other things that you guys have been seeing that you want to share? Other events and things going on? Holiday things that are coming up?
There's a bunch of holiday markets popping up. There used to be one, there was one, I think down by the canal side. It's been there for a couple of years, but now they're starting to pop up more and more. So that's one thing that the effect may be diluted if multiple neighborhoods or communities are doing the same type of thing. Or you can link them together and have a tour of a Christmas bar or holiday market, you know, through Western New York on a Saturday or a weekend or whatever. But
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, so what is a district manager's role here? So I am by no means saying go and run an event every month. You don't want to be like event heavy all the time. It's a lot of bandwidth. It takes a lot of volunteer power and staff power. So yeah, stay realistic about the capacity and the bandwidth that you have, but know what's happening and communicate that. So what Carl was saying, communicate with residents so that they know what is coming up, but also communicating with businesses. So I don't know if everyone here has a business email list, so you can share with businesses like this is coming, make sure you're open. You know, you don't want to have a big holiday celebration or something going on and then businesses are closed. You know, so making sure that people know and are communicated with about what's going on, making ties and connections to your brand. So if there's an event that's happening that you're not organizing, is there a way that you can talk to the organizers and see if there's a way to make a stronger connection to your brand, whatever that brand might be that you decide on? And then really strategizing about how these events support those businesses, that brand, and your budget. So I'm going to pass the baton now to Jonathan Stone, our speaker today. Good morning, Jonathan. Jonathan is a arts management, placemaking, and nonprofit professional with 15 years of experience. His background is in architecture, and also he has a master's focused on marketing and nonprofit management and information systems. He's currently the executive director of the Flagstaff Arts Council in Arizona, but previously he served as the executive director of Downtown Oregon City Association for 5 years. And I've asked Jonathan to jump in. I'll let him do a little introduction of himself and his and Downtown Oregon City and the work that he did there. But I'm going to kick it off with the question of how did you work with stakeholders to really come to consensus around your district's brand identity? And with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing and pass it on.
Yeah, so I can touch on that a little bit. And you know, as Cyrus said, I have a penchant for rebranding things. So this Downtown Oregon City Association used to be Main Street Oregon City, and Flagstaff Arts Council is actually now Creative Flagstaff, and I'll explain that a little bit. Both processes we've done have been kind of research and community based, and have involved a number of, you know, community meetings and focus groups, and a lot of the times when we think about brand, I actually think about strategy. You know, what is the district or the sector's goals, and then ultimately you follow through with an image or a brand that you think would support that. And so our work and my work has always been what I think consider to be community based, and is driven through the input of community members, and we use different tools like roundtables, surveys. You know, we had like, for example, my current organization, when we said we want to rethink or at least revisit this idea of what is the Flagstaff Arts Council, we had over 100 people show up to the first meeting, and that was refreshing to know that there were that many people excited to kind of dig in and imagine what a organization is designed to support them in the cultural sector, what it can do for them. So I just try to bring people together, really. I don't know how else to say it. You're muted.
Jonathan, do you want to share a little bit more about how your promotional strategy really supported that brand?
Do you want me to roll through my presentation, since I think it will answer some of the questions?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
And you have co-host ability already, right? So you can share your
I
screen.
believe so. So let me
You
try
should be
here.
fine.
Okay, so when Syra reached out to me, we both have, our paths crossed in Oregon, and I was just thinking about some of the points that she was making, and one of the events that has always stood out in my mind in Oregon that I always wish I had a chance to go to, but I think was so rooted in the community's personality, was this event called the Jane Barnes Review in Astoria, Oregon. And why I always think about that as an example event is that it's essentially a pageant that features community leaders in drag. And so imagine this town of Astoria with the city manager going, and they use it as a promotional strategy to bring the contestants around to the hair salon and the nail salon and different places to get ready for the pageant, and then a city manager in drag on stage in front of the community. I think is just exemplifies, in that sense, to me, that says we're tight knit, we're low key, we're not uptight about anything, and we do things together as a community. So on the slide here, so Syra introduced me as executive director of Flagstaff Arts Council. While that's still true for the IRS publicly, we call ourselves Creative Flagstaff, and I wanted to use it as an example when I think about branding and why we might approach naming and how we want to convey an attitude of an organization, a sector, or a district. And when our work, we're actually the art, science, and culture agency for the city of Flagstaff. And when we started to think about what does it mean to be a science agency and a culture agency, we really kind of extrapolated this idea of arts and ideas. And so this slide kind of really talks about what we think is a creative city and how we bring arts together with everything else that makes our community vibrant and gives our community a sense of identity. And so we've really broadened our scope, but also simplified it in a way to talk about the intersection of arts with everything else. We recently also did a major strategic plan update. If you have extra time on your hands, you can Google our website, Creative Flagstaff. But this is a lengthy document, but it kind of really goes into our minds about why we did what we did. And my point about brand is that brand follows. You don't want to start with brand. You really want to start with strategy. You want to start with what makes your community tick. And so for our current organization, this is what we came together to build a strategy around these 5 priorities. This video, this video I'm going to show you is just very fortunate that we have access to this video. In 2018, Oregon City was named the Great American Main Street, was awarded the Great American Main Street Award. And so you'll see a younger version of me, apparently rounder in the face too. And so this gives you kind of a really good sense of what Oregon City is.
We've been around since 1844. It's the oldest main street west of the Rocky Mountains. Downtown really was kind of a ghost town when I was growing up.
But now there's definitely new life, new ideas downtown.
There's been a lot of positive changes in the area, making the area a lot more family friendly, a lot more walkable.
It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and growing more and more every day.
I don't think it was a question of whether Main Street was the right approach or not for downtown Oregon City. It's really about a holistic approach. It's looking at everything that makes a community vibrant.
Economic revitalization has been very important to us. We need to stand on our own 2 feet and make sure that we have a good mix of business here.
It's a great partnership. We all have the same thing in common, and that is we want to develop Oregon City. We want to bring new businesses into Oregon City. We want to create family wage jobs in Oregon City.
There's definitely room for more ideas. People love to participate in those kinds of processes.
Public visioning is a great way to do that. So get everybody in the same room and just let the ideas flow.
In terms of visioning and listening to the community, I think that's really strengthened the organization and taken them to a different level.
I think in the beginning, the events are what brought people downtown.
They're super creative with their promotional and marketing opportunities, doing things like the Oregon Trail Run.
People my age remember the Oregon Trail game from the 80s. And as you run this 5K, you actually play the Oregon Trail game. That event is definitely proven to be viral and engaging and something that the actual local community is very proud of.
The mill is downtown Oregon City. Now we're in the process of redeveloping that site. And so for the first time in over 150 years, the public will actually be able to get back out to Willamette Falls on the Oregon City side of the river.
Opening that up down there would be amazing. It's what this city needs.
The mill site is actually part of the original grid of Main Street. So it's really revitalizing and keeping that historical integrity together.
Downtown Oregon City is already awesome. And the future of the mill and the reconnection to Willamette Falls will make it even better.
Downtown had always been identified as a blue-collar community. And so they came up with something called the Blue Collar Creative and began to attract creative talents to the downtown. Some of the early businesses were like Funnel Box.
And Funnel Box is a motion picture company, and they've spun off several other companies.
They really wanted that creative space. And now that they're here, they don't want to go.
They've created over 75 family wage jobs.
And I think one of the great things about downtown Oregon City is they've been able to attract first-time business owners.
When they come to Main Street, they know that they're going to be supported by the city, but specifically the Main Street program.
When we first started looking down here, we contacted the downtown organization and said, this is what we'd like to do. And we felt like we had somebody knowledgeable who had our back. This property needed every major system replaced.
We were able to help White Rabbit and Black King Coffee with a $60,000 grant.
Without the last grant, we would still be closed. I love the history. I love that people walk in and say, I knew this owner, I came and ate my meals here, and they already feel connected to the building. And I think I like that tie-in with community. So people walk in and we already have a connection.
When I come to downtown Oregon City today, it's dramatically different than the town that I visited in October of 2009. There's new businesses, there's a vibrancy. We're seeing the results of their years of effort. And it shows. It shows in the commitment, it shows in people, it shows in the engagement. It's a wonderful place to be.
I hope that video came through okay. Flagstaff, Arizona has some of the worst internet on earth, so hopefully it came through. Yep, there we go. So I was, Syra asked me a number of questions and we chatted yesterday, and I just wanted to kind of share some points. So there's sort of a flow to a few of the slides I have over the next 5 minutes or so. But when I think about community identity, I'm listening to some of the points that you guys were discussing earlier, and really it's like, what builds sort of the cultural identity of a district, and especially when you're talking about neighborhood districts, and so what are the things that build emotional strength, and what are the points of pride that bring our community? Those might be physical things, they might be traditions. Are there symbols? Are there gathering places? I heard somebody say, that a particular place in Buffalo was churches and liquor stores. So you might have to look somewhere different, but maybe the church community is part of of the point of pride or the culture for that place. And then how do you ensure it remains locally driven? And so, you know, the video makes it look like a lot has happened in Oregon City, which it has. But in Oregon City, it's taken, you know, well over a decade to see some of the progress they had. And that the Willamette Falls project, and the photo that I'm showing here is of Willamette Falls. It is the second largest waterfall by volume in North America, second to Niagara, which you guys are familiar with in that part of the country, but you probably never heard of it. And but it's a point of pride. But that mill site, you know, that project to redevelop the mill site has been going on, I think at this point now for about a decade. And so, and they're just now starting construction. So things take time. And when I think about, you know, brand, we think about a vessel. So what are all those things that we want to put into our vessel to create sort of that image that you want to convey? And related to the idea of locally driven, we don't want to be sanitized. And when we kind of go for the lowest common denominator, we end up with you know, places that look like everywhere else. And so how do you keep your thoughts and focus on this idea of local wealth and investment? So in Oregon City, I just want to share some of the things that we did that were talked about in the video. So we have points of pride in our community. And so on the left there is a project that we started called the Best of Oregon City to celebrate all the things that we like about our business community. The top there is one of the first graphics we did for that 5K that was mentioned. So you can see we have pixelated runners that are running across the finish line. And then the bottom there, Carrie, she was most business districts don't have a job called elevator manager. But if you could see in some of the parts of the video, we have this municipal elevator that connects. It's like kind of like public transportation elevator between the upper part of the city and the lower part of the city. And so this is a graphic that we installed in there, but it talks about this idea of being Oregon's hometown. And the hometown has many connotations in how we think about Oregon City. One being the fact that Willamette Falls is a gathering place for centuries before modern settlement has come in, and but then also Oregon City was the original territorial capital of Oregon Territory before it moved to Salem. And so there's layers to this idea of hometown and kind of trying to connect people to Oregon City as something that they should have a connection to. And so we know that events bring people together. Just a few examples that we did in Oregon City. One was called the First City Celebration. They had about 5,000 plus attendees. That was a more community-oriented festival. So there might be tourists that show up for it, but really it's about just getting people downtown and to experience the district in a positive way. And when First City Celebration started, there were no restaurants. There was nothing going on in downtown Oregon City with the exception of a number of bars. I think the density of liquor licenses in Oregon City when Main Street Oregon City got started was some of the highest in the state. Best of Oregon City, you can see the upper right there, we did a gala or an award ceremony. It celebrated over 100 businesses. The Oregon Trail game, you know, knocked our socks off. We were like, holy cow. You know, we expected maybe 200 runners the first year, and I believe the first year was over almost 500, and at its peak had over 700 runners that were participating in that race, which apparently is pretty good for a 5K. And then another promotion that we did, we called the Snowflake Raffle, and we had about 25,000 entries into that raffle in its first year. I always like to think about where the cash register is when we think about promotions and events. The First City Celebration, we introduced a suggested donation, and in the first year we brought in $10,000. So we kept it accessible to people that didn't want to pay, couldn't pay, didn't pay, and there were others that paid more. But just that simple addition of a suggested donation helped raise money to support the event and our program. And then the other insight I have, and it's probably not a surprise, beer sells, especially in Oregon. Portland Metro really prides itself on being sort of a craft beer city, and it's really interesting semantics. First City's always had some kind of beer garden. We changed it and called it the Oregon Trail Brew Fest. And in the first year, we blew through 60 kegs of beer. More people showed up specifically for that. We just literally changed the name of it and sourced beer differently. And it was just kind of amazing how that worked. There's some low lift projects that we did as well. One is called Wine Walk. Sounds like you guys have similar events in Buffalo. But if you structure it just right, it doesn't take a lot of work, and it raised $10,000 for our organization in its first iteration. And then the 5K, we think about doing things that have low cost. A 5K can be very expensive, but if you can figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't have all the logistics of street closures, then you end up being able to raise more money through that activity. And by having it as being a premium concept race, like having a game attached to it, we were able to charge more. And then on the right hand side there, you can see we introduced ornaments. So that's the elevator to hang on your tree form. And in the first time we did that, because people love the elevator, we sold about $10,000 worth of ornaments in the first year. So there's lots of little things that add up to provide financial support to support a program that then ultimately is doing other work to support your districts. Just a couple of notes here that Saira already shared. It's about doing things together. And so you don't always need to do it. In doing events, and as many events as we did, was only possible because of how much resources we had as an organization. But it's also a fine balance between being able to do events and then having events kill an organization. So you got to find that balance because you don't want to burn yourself out. You want to do things in a sustainable way. And so work with, collaborate with, co-promote. I said yesterday, the big hug, so how do we kind of hug everything that's happening in and around the places that we're trying to bring attention to. So next steps in time of COVID, I pulled that puppy picture because I thought, I guess in the time of COVID, you just got to find things that make you happy. And I think puppies and beer fit that description. And then on the second two pictures, that is the Vial Awards, which is an event we do here in Flagstaff. For the first, always has been a gala. For the first time ever, we did it outdoors this year at an amphitheater, and people loved it. And so what that sense is, it can be simple. It doesn't need to be overdone. All they care about at this point is getting together safely. And so think about doing things differently. And I think COVID has really taught us that nothing's sacred. Everything can be rethought, and people are forgiving, that things might change. So there's just a disparate set of thoughts about my work over the past 8 years, I guess, at this point. Any questions? Or maybe I could answer Saira's questions now.
I'll let others jump in for questions first, if they have any.
And if you're shy, you can email or you can text me and I will read the question, or you can put it in the chat and either Saira or I will read it out loud.
So I'll just put this out there. Downtown Oregon City is very different from the east side of Buffalo. This is obvious, but it's also about the concepts of like, what are the things that people are excited about, and then how to play those up. And so I just will pose that for you, Jonathan, about like, how did you work with the stakeholders to identify that? Or did your organization kind of just run with what was already happening?
The elevator, it's an icon. and Oregon City people love it. And it's like, okay, we're going to play this as long as we can. And not just for our promotional strategies and organization, but for the district. And so we built a lot of things around that unique asset in our community. We had a large art project that was projected on the elevator. So we've done a lot of things around that, for example.
What do you think was the single most successful thing you did? That, you know, if you were going to do one thing, what would it be, looking back?
You know, it's hard to think about a single most successful thing, because you know, some things are designed to kind of build identity. You know, it gets in front of as many people as possible. You know, like the 5K, for example. While maybe 400 to 700 people ran it in a given year, in the first year that it was out, it got I think 500,000 impressions on earned media, because it was interesting enough that people wanted to talk about it online. And so I think those things that kind of helped the community talk about Oregon City in a positive way were those opportunities for success. And so the successful point is that every time we were able to get people to talk about Oregon City positively, every time we were able to get people to downtown Oregon City to have positive experiences, even if it was early in the transformation of the district, because you know, they otherwise may not have had reason to come there. And slowly the tides will shift as people start to, you know, kind of replace their previous conceptions of a place with more positive ones.
Jonathan, did you hear from businesses particularly about how these events supported them? Or if they're like increased in sales from these things, or, you know, what was your feedback?
Actually, I'll answer it with sort of the opposite. You know, one of the things that, if you're familiar with the street festivals, they are a love-hate relationship with business districts, and meaning the businesses that are in the footprint of the street festival love it, everybody else hates it. And usually that's, especially when that kind of event is getting started, it's because they don't know what the long-term benefits are going to be. And so we were constantly having to kind of think of ways to bridge the district, the event footprint with the rest of the district, and try to build connections with the people that came to the event to then help them come back at another day. And so the things like a festival, it's a long game. It's not the day of game, especially if you're like a salon or a retailer that is going to be unable to operate at their normal scale if parking is a problem. And so, so it's finding that balance with other kinds of promotions like the wine walk, the snowflake raffle, and others that kind of support shopping or going to restaurants or doing business in the district versus coming to the district for a sort of an inserted experience.
Jonathan, what's the snowflake raffle?
I wrote it down and I'm like trying to remember exactly what it was, but it's been a few years. But what we did is we created these raffle tickets that you could get for every so many dollars purchased at a local business. And then that raffle ticket would allow you to enter in to win prizes. And I think the first year we did it, we gave away like a $2,500 grand prize or something. And we built it so that you could register your ticket online, so people didn't have to take the tickets anywhere. But then we had an event, and I think it actually coincided with like our Santa tree lighting event, where we would pull the winner of that and give out the grand prize. I see Brandy has her hand up.
Yeah.
And we also have a question.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. And then there's a question in the chat too.
Did you want to do the question in the chat first?
No, you go ahead, Brandy.
Okay. Sorry. So one of the many events that I used to look forward to as a little girl and somewhat into my adult years was the Gus Macker in downtown Buffalo. And it would bring so many people from near and far to downtown Buffalo. And it was actually, I think, during the time that we actually, retail was still booming in downtown. But it seemed based on the goals of our city leaders, the premise or the culture, if you will, was not welcomed anymore. And the look of where the city was going, it just wasn't welcoming. So what would be your feedback, Jonathan, when we're trying to either bring back a nostalgia event that meant so much to many people in the city, and how does that marry with the current idea or development plan with current city officials and leaders?
So I'm just trying to rephrase. So there was an event that had a cultural identity.
And if I'm sorry, Jonathan, if anybody remembers the Gus Mack, please feel free to kind of jump in and share that history as well. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, but that event went away because leadership changed, or because just that just community priorities shifted, or?
I think there were a couple things, and I think one of them was insurance. I think it was an insurance. Insurance became problematic to cover the cost. I think that was part of the issue. But they have another thing. It's called, I don't know, the 90-day or 60-day or 30-day power play, which is a hockey type of thing that is played continuously. I think this is a perfect opportunity to reintroduce the Gus Macker concept back into the city, in if not downtown, somewhere in one of the communities.
Yeah, for me, it just seemed as if basketball and hockey are always like the two competitive sports. I mean, we have football, but when it comes to community outreach, right, it's always this competitiveness between hockey and basketball, or in the communities that come from these two areas. And it seems as if and I'm picking my words, I'm choosing my words here.
Brandy, you can be, I think you can be straightforward, because I think I know where you're going with this.
Okay, great. So it just seems as if, the Black community, who are very strong in basketball and have that unity, were being pushed out. They didn't want to see it. So they wanted to see more European or white cultural sports like hockey, because that was more easier to digest for them because of the new booming or the new renaissance of Buffalo. So and I watched the Gus Macker get pushed out to Olean and to Darien Lake, and it got further and further where Black people could not access it, could not celebrate years. I had on a Gus Macker t-shirt last night. I think I went to bed and it was almost a 20-year t-shirt. So it has history, it has culture. It wasn't just something that was local, because people would literally come from all over the United States to take part in a weekend event. So I think it is culturally based, and it feels a bit like gentrification, like we're continuing to be being pushed out of Black and brown communities or Black and brown cultural events. So thank you, Kate.
And this is Sydney. If I can just chime into what Brandy was speaking about, I'll say even with the hockey, MLK Park has a beautiful, I'll say sprinkler system and water park where the city said that there was going to be hockey. How come hockey hasn't been promoted and another site for hockey enthusiasts to utilize MLK Park with the ice rink there, that everything is on Canal side. So definitely as far as demographics and black and brown versus lighter hues, there are issues here in Buffalo as to why the east side is the way that it is. So I just wanted to bring that up. Even with the hockey, hockey could be taking place on the east side of Buffalo in MLK Park, but it's not.
I'm having a hard time being able to speak to that particular event. That's really unfortunate. That event has been pushed aside, I guess. But I'm mindful of the time. I have another meeting I'm supposed to be at shortly. But I'm seeing the question in the chat about centering where to go
Equity
into our strategies. And you know, it's interesting. So when I was in Oregon City, this idea, you know, this was what, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And so it wasn't as the concept of equity in the way that we can maybe sort of understand it now was not as prominent. And we also look at the what Oregon City is demographically, you know, it's a very different, it's not a very diverse community. And unfortunately, Oregon City, you know, has had a lot of challenges, and not necessarily related to the downtown district. That being said, one of the really shining points of our work, and I was the founding treasurer of an organization called the Willamette Falls Trust. And access to Willamette Falls and sort of returning Willamette Falls to the public really was deeply rooted in this idea of equity, especially because now the site is owned by the Grand Ronde tribe, and so where they're able to restore their you know, sort of ancestral ties to the falls, and so from the beginning of that work, the tribes have all been deeply involved in that conversation. When I look at the rest of the district, you know, we were very much focused on foot traffic and sort of viability of businesses, and you know, if there was a different demographic in our community, I'm certain that we would have been looking at ways to build opportunity for all of those the different groups of people. And one of the things I think we're proud of in Oregon City is the degree of first-time business owners that were able to make a go in Oregon City, and I would like to believe if it was a more diverse community, that those opportunities would have been equally shared. I can't say for sure, and I certainly hope that we would have listened and adapted our strategy if anything was found to be not equitable. But you know, it's Oregon City is a very, very white community, and so you know, my interest coming into the communities, and what I really love about what you guys are doing in Buffalo is sort of this sort of post-industrial renaissance, and Oregon City was very much about that, sort of that blue collar working class, you know, river forest economy town trying to find its way into the future. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question a little bit more directly. That being said, my work here in Flagstaff is very much focused on equity. We've changed our mission statement to 2 words: creative opportunity. And we're very focused on understanding that Flagstaff is a gathering point for Northern Arizona, which is the, you know, so we are the commercial center, and we're also the sort of ancestral and sacred home for many of our indigenous tribes, including the Navajo Nation, which is the largest Native American reservation in the country. So, you know, we try to center equity in our work whenever there are opportunities to do so.
Jonathan, I know that you have to step away and go to another meeting. Let me just ask one final question. If people from this group wanted to bring back the Gus Macker, it's a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. If that was going to happen here, I know that you did a project where you had 3 photos and you had to recreate an event that happened many, many years ago. I think you mentioned that to me at one point in time, Jonathan. What would be like a first step for this group if they wanted to do something like that? Like take the image and the feel of an old event and bring it back.
I apologize. I was trying to find the email thread to send my next meeting a note. Can you restate that?
Yeah. If you, if this group wanted to bring back, so the Gus Macker is a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. If this group wanted to bring that back, what would be a first step? And I ask you this because I know that you had to create an event based on like 3 photos at one point in time.
I mean, I would just start with the people that were involved in the event before and say, you know what, we want to make this happen, and get them in the same room, and maybe find some sympathetic policymakers and just kind of plant that seed and say, this is our goal. We want to bring it back. I mean, everything has to start from a conversation somewhere, right? And maybe this Zoom call this morning is the beginning of that conversation. If you think it is so important and will kind of, you know, recenter, you know, different parts of the community, I think, you know, why don't you use the next 30 minutes to figure, you know, to start talking about that? It sounds like a great opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thanks for your time. And I know that he has to jump, so we will stay on and continue the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
So I'm going to offer 2 options here for the next 20 minutes. I initially had a worksheet that goes through some questions to start thinking about brand. We also have this new HubSite tool that I wanted to share with you. But do we want to talk about bringing back an event? I mean, if that's the direction that this group wants to go, we can pivot. I'll put that out there for you. Athena's saying yes.
Yes to all of it.
I would say I would get a couple of people and have them, if they're interested, like a little subcommittee to figure out what is needed. I know there's there's a request form on the Gus Macker page that you need to fill out to request additional information on hosting a tournament. So, but you know, a couple people can go offline and kind of figure it out.
We could use one of the breakout rooms for, you know, Gus Macker fans, and if there are other people that want to work on the other piece of it, Syra, we could do that too.
That sounds good to me. We have this breakout room option where you can choose. I know we tried it last time and it didn't entirely work, but we're going to try it again.
Before we do that, what's the option B again? The hub thing?
The hub site and the activity. So I will ask Kate to drop the worksheet.
It's already, just the worksheet?
Yep, just the worksheet for today. So that is the worksheet session 2. I'll do a quick screen share to show everybody what these things are that I'm talking about.
And you're going to cover some point before we end, folks opting into a list, communications list, so we can get a hold of people offline?
Yep, I did mention that earlier. We did send an email out.
Sorry,
So
couldn't
if,
remember.
it's all good. If you did not add your name to that opt-in list and you want to, please send me an email. I will add your email and your phone number. It is on this. So if you go to the box link, the general one, there is right now a contact list, and it does have updated the people that have opted in to provide their email and phone number. So that is there. Also, if you go to session 2, and I think Kate dropped this link in the chat.
I did, and they'll have access to all 3 pieces, but if they go into the, unfortunately, Sarah, the way that it's set up right now, I'm gonna have to change the settings, so it's gonna take me a second to get that
Okay.
worksheet for you.
Okay, that's fine. So the worksheet basically asks some of these questions that we went through today, like the assets, business mix, positive attitudes, and then comes down to what are some efforts that we can do to support business this quarter? Like, what are some things that we could look at doing that could potentially be done bigger or broader next year, that we could look at doing? So this is the worksheet. As far as the hub site goes and an introduction of this tool, I'm going to drop this link in the chat so that you all have it as well. So this is just an open source, like an ArcGIS tool that we've been developing. And on this top side, there are tons of different little icons. So Brandy, you were mentioning that you have a lot of churches and a lot of liquor stores, right? And like trying to understand what assets there are has been a challenge, or can be a challenge. So this tool is designed to help you look at everything from assets, but also what is currently existing. So you can look at things like existing land use, and it'll show you, it's taking a moment to populate, but you can see how that existing land use is populating here on this map. You could also turn that off and look at things like assets. So on this, we also have quality of life here. So you can look at things like what senior centers are there, where are the community centers. You can turn on and off all of these different tabs. You can go to the economic development layer and look at things like historic districts. That's an asset, right? Or we can look at things like the cultural economy, like what are the culinary arts and cultural centers and libraries and museums that are here in these districts. And when you click on those buttons, it tells you what it is. So this is Zawadi Books, for example. It's listed as a cultural economy business. You can turn on creative economy assets. So what are those architecture and landscape architecture businesses that are here, performing arts, publishing, and printing? So you can really use this as a tool to overlay different pieces to see what is happening. And this is just like the real data. Like we pulled this from NAICS codes. What are some other examples? East Side landmarks. These are all historic landmarks. Again, if you click on it, it'll tell you what it is. So this is the Maston Avenue Armory. We've got all kinds of things down here. Different churches are listed there. These are listed as assets. So these are just different, a different way of looking at this visually. And you can turn all these different things on either together or separately to see the interrelationships. So you can even look at things like ownership and what you can, as an asset, you can see some places that have a lot of owner occupied homes. When you zoom in, you can really see that. And the keys are all here on the right-hand side. So this is just a tool that you can use to start to look at assets and start to see things kind of visually. It's a lot to take in. Yeah.
You said that A is East Side neighborhood plan areas. Like I'm looking at in the fruit belt, yeah, and there's a area named A, and it says East Side neighborhood plan areas. So is that something that's planning to be there, or?
No, these are existing things.
Oh,
everything
okay.
here is existing. So when we talk about area A, it connects with that within plan, the livability plan that we've been talking about for a while. Areas A, B, and C, we didn't want to call them by name because we recognize that there's some of these areas have several neighborhoods in them. So we didn't want to call it a specific name. But there are some things, like if we knew, let me turn off the layers I have right now. If we knew what planned bus shelters are coming in, we did put that on there. So you can see what bus shelters are planned. Also, what are existing? What are high use bus stops? You can turn all of these things on or off. What are the existing bicycle routes? So we worked with a lot of partners. Like for this, it was like Greater Buffalo, GBNRTC, to collect a lot of the data that they already had. So we just worked with the partners. We worked with PBN to get a lot of the historic data in GIS format. And we just put it all in one spot. That's basically what we were doing through this process.
Is there a link to this?
Yep.
So somewhere?
Yep, it's in the chat, I think. I put it there.
It's
already
it's under
posted.
Syra. Yep.
Yeah.
Where it
And
says
it-
LISCNYC.maps.
Yeah, it opens right away. I already looked at it. So somebody should say, this is pretty impressive work on the part of LISC. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. This is the first time we're showing it. It came out yesterday. So I'm glad to hear
It's
that
really not, and it's really not like published. Like it's en route of publishing. So you guys have you're seeing like the first copy.
This is the very first copy. It is also linked in this box folder. So under the where did I put it? Just under the general downloadable materials for training, there is a link here to the interactive hub site. So as long as you have access to that folder, you can just click this and it'll take you right to it. Like this. So we have 10 minutes left. This is a lot to digest. What other questions do we have about the hub site, about the promotions, worksheet? That can be something that you do with your groups individually. Any reflections?
Kind of like the idea of linking arts to almost everything, to infrastructure development, to housing policy, to commercial district programs. It's like always having it as an overlay or even an intro or link to just seems like it's worked. My first thought watching his presentation was, this is the Elmwood Village Association 30 years ago. A white city and not the same kind of problems that the East Side faces and Broadway Fillmore, in particular. So I just think we also have the balancing act of paying attention to events as diverse as, say, the Dingus Day Parade, which wants to bring the old Polish community back to Broadway Fillmore, the Juneteenth Festival, which wants to celebrate the African American community, and the rapidly emerging new American community, particularly the Muslim community spread across several different nationalities. So we have an incredible challenge, an incredible opportunity, but a real balancing act to sort of always keep in mind as we go forward.
Yeah, Steve, and we heard a lot about arts and culture throughout several of our engagements, and you'll see that in this action plan reflected in different ways, and thinking about how that is brought up front, Because I think a big part of this is also like, how are we approaching gentrification? How are we making sure that businesses aren't getting pushed out? And how are we really connecting to those that have already been here and like uplifting those narratives and those identities? And I think Broadway Fillmore is extremely difficult, especially because of all of the things that you've said, Steve. Like, who else wants to kind of jump in about what they're seeing in their district already? Nothing? Well, I will leave you all with the worksheet, which is something to just really start thinking strategically about how, like Steve, you can take all of those examples and use that in that worksheet around like, let's open it up. Around some of that branding question, like who's there, what's the market, and how are those things interweaving? And the thing about your brand is it might not be one thing. It might be that there's all these different elements that are coming together. And how is that kind of forming that look and that feel for your district as well?
It's like
I
the
think
cultural collective like maybe Broadway Filmer is a cultural collective where other neighborhoods aren't going to have kind of like the influx, Steve, that you're talking about. Like you have three kind of what you just said, three kind of very distinct groups. But how can you unify them and capitalize on what you have? Syra, should we try to gather who would like just to be helpful, who would like to be a part of like a Gus Macker conversation?
Yep.
If you want to put, I don't know if you would prefer to just send us an email and we can then do an email introduction to all the people who would like to talk about Gus Macker as a project. Because if somebody isn't interested, like if a district isn't interested, that's fine, but just try to be able to get because we haven't had time today to get those people together at least in an email thread. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. Or drop your name in the chat if that's something that you want to do. And we will at least just get people talking together.
Connected.
Yeah, connected.
This is Carl. I sent in a email to them asking for more information about the process to get a tournament as well as the cost.
Great.
I'm not one to kind of sit in like committee a thing to death, although I think these worksheets, I think folks in their district need to kind of get together and come up with a single reply or single answers to the worksheets. Otherwise, it's every man or woman for himself. That's why I think it's important to get the communication list out amongst us so we can kind of get, create these subgroups of neighborhood, folks that are interested in their particular business district. And there might be folks here that, they're a army of one, but and maybe other groups can help them kind of get through some of this as well. But I think that communication list is really critical.
Yeah.
Carl, solve the insurance problem and do the Gus Macker right on the parking lot at the Central Terminal.
Yeah, or you could
I'm here for it. That is a great idea, Steve.
you can close down Memorial Drive, and there you go. You got it.
My
And
dog
somebody agrees.
too.
I was just going to say, and the dog agreed.
Yeah, it sounds like in the chat, there's a lot of talk. That's a great suggestion. There's other people that are interested in a discussion. So, well, that's a great outcome of this meeting. Let's get the Gus Macker back up and running. Let's figure out how to do it. Um,
I'm willing to jump in, whoever, you know, if it's a committee, I'm here, so.
Awesome. We have just a few more minutes. I'm going to ask Kate to drop the survey link in the chat. It's the same survey as last time. And thank you for joining us today. The next session will be on December 9th. It's on the economic vitality. We're going to be talking about business clusters and property inventories and business inventories and what you can do with all of those things. And we have several speakers next time too. So
Before we depart, and I'm only to speak to the Broadway Fillmore folks here. Do we want to get together? I hate, I hate this because it's yet another meeting, but how do we want to handle the worksheet to get a common set of ideas down? Or is it going to be everybody for themselves? Come on.
I'll just jump in to say that the intention was to do breakouts where people could meet as a team.
Sure.
So the intention was not to do it solo, but to whoever's here together to do it together. Yeah.
Carol, we'll reach out to you.
And it would also be nice to find out how many folks are an army of one here. So we can kind of like, those who've been doing this for a while, if they have extra cycles, can help them get their thoughts down on paper, because I think it's important.
Lynn, I think you're a one, right?
I am. I was just sitting here thinking, okay, how can we make this 2, 3, 4?
Well, it's a start. You're here, which is great. Now
Yeah.
you got to figure out, but other folks can help.
Well, and Lynn, I think Susan, right, told you about this meeting, so she knows about it too. And so it could be worth a conversation of just having a meeting to figure out some of these questions and to go through some of these worksheets with your board or the committees that you're working with.
Yeah.
And getting people aligned, and they're welcome to come. So let them know that they can come to any of these sessions.
I will. Most of them said that they were pretty busy. I'm the only one that is free during the day like this, so.
And the other thing is, and Syra, if I'm not speaking correctly, you can let me know, but your business districts are your business districts, but those also include residents, right? So it may be that there are people that are really active within block clubs that might have insight as to what brand your commercial district is going to want. Or it may be that there's an individual who owns a business that would really be very active in helping to kind of create this. So it's not just about the people that are here, but also thinking about who you can also bring, who all you can bring in, so that it's not just work that 1 or 2 people have to do. Because I think if I've taken anything away, it's the more you can bring in, the better.
I think here in Kaisertown anyway, there's a lot of apathy that we've been trying to fight against. And this has been going on for years and years. So just getting past that apathy is a struggle.
My thought is, I think, to help with that is, I think this thing of communicating to residents in a medium that they can see, because not everybody's online. Not everybody has, most people have a smartphone, but a lot of people don't do emails, or they do emails, they do it like once a month. People don't have that access. You have to have it visibly displayed within the community of what's going on, else you're not going to be able to reach those people that are apathetic or don't know what's going on in their own community. And I have some ideas that I'm going to kind of think about a little bit more, put on paper.
Well, these are the exact types of conversations we're hoping will come out of this, is how are people can work together to start to really address their district strategy. So this is great. Thank you for being here. I know that Barbara is also, she wanted to come here today and she couldn't be here, but she was also a party of one. So we'll have to kind of figure out how we approach some of these things together,
Yeah. Just in general.
Yeah, just in general. Yeah. So thanks again. The survey is in the chat. I'm going to put on a little bit of music to get us boogieing on out of here and into the rest of our day.
So can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, absolutely.
All that stuff all the links that are in the chat, that'll still be there that I can reference later?
Yep, and there's actually even more links, some more resources and materials in that box folder. So if you go to session 2, the PowerPoint will be there. There will be a few different like tip sheets around promotions that are asking some questions. The worksheet is in there. And then we are saving the chats as well in that same.
Do I have to have box in order to access that?
No.
Kate's our box expert. So if Kate, are we?
And what I will also do is I'm gonna just put I will send out a link in an email. I'll just make sure that I know that Tyra has all of your emails, so I will make sure that gets also sent as an email, and you can just go in and access anything that's in there is downloadable.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Don't be apathetic about our survey, though.
I won't. I'm not apathetic, but yeah.
Cue music, Syra. Cue music.
Can you hear it? Is it on? Oh, shoot.
Did you forget to click the button? Did you forget to click the button?
No. What about now?
It's quiet.
Let's turn it up.
Crank it. Good choice.
That was a good groove out situation, good groove out song.
Everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Be well and stay safe.
Yes, to all of you. Have a good time away. Step away from work for a couple days.
Peace out.